Hello, welcome back to Intro to Programming. So today is an exciting day because it's our first look at JavaScript. All right, so this is going to allow us to make our web pages more interactive. It's going to allow them to kind of change on the fly or be a little more dynamic when the user interacts with them in different ways. All right, so first things first, you should have downloaded the zip file from either your email or from Google Classroom. Don't forget that we can't use these directly, so you have to extract the files. So if you right click on this, there should be an extract all. The location that they pick is usually fine, so you can click extract. Now this automatically opens a window, but just to kind of keep yourself organized, what I usually say is close the window, and now you can delete the zip file. All right, once you've unzipped it, you no longer need it. So I can delete the one that has the zipper on it, and then right here is the one that I can now use going forward. All right, so if I open this, I'm going to start by opening demo with Notepad++. I'm going to right click on this, edit with Notepad++. You're going to see there's a whole bunch of code in here, but before I even get into the code, I just want to take a look at the page and sort of see what it does. So I'm going to say view current file in Chrome. All right, I've got a page that loads. All right, you're going to notice that the date and time is the current date and time, or at least it's the time that I'm making this video. And then there's all these buttons. All right, so if I click on activate, all of a sudden an entire web page kind of shows up. If I click on deactivate, the web page disappears. If I click on detonate, I get a little box that says, are you sure? And I'm actually not sure. I mean, that sounds kind of scary, so I'm just going to click cancel. But if I click OK, boom! Did that scare you? I hope it did. All right. It just says boom on the page. All right. And then if I hit deactivate, it goes away. If I hit activate, I get this page back. If I hit detonate, boom, and so on and so forth. All right. If I click opposite day, notice that this button now says deactivate and this button says activate. But this is the one that activates it. This is the one that deactivates it. They're just backwards because it's opposite day. And then if I click regular day, they go back to the way they were. Now I'm going to hold off on the end for a second, but my eyes hurt. All right. If I move my mouse over it, I'm not even clicking right now. The page goes white, and then if I move my mouse off of it, the page goes back to yellow. So on white, off yellow, and again, I'm not clicking right now. This is just happening as I move my mouse back and forth across the button. And then there's the end, which if I click on it, nothing happens. If I click on it again, nothing happens. But if I double click, there goes my page. It's gone. What happened? Where did it go? It's over. Why are you still here? You should just go. Or you should refresh the page and then it'll all come back. Okay. So obviously this is way more interactive than the pages we've been dealing with. So what's going on? How did I make this magic happen? The answer is fairies. Not convinced? All right, let's take a look at the code. All right, so we have here our regular HTML tag, our head tag, there's our title. That's linking in a style sheet. I've got a whole bunch of new code here that we're going to talk about in a second. Then I have a body tag, again, a script tag, and we haven't really talked about that yet, but that's what we're going to be talking about. We've got all these buttons, right? So this is the button tag. We haven't really used that, but there it is. We've got a div tag and then all of the page. And then we've got another div tag down here and the word boom. All right, so let's take a closer look so that we can see what's actually happening here. And we can talk about how this all works. So the magic is happening here with these buttons. All right, now it didn't have to be buttons, and I'll show you that later on. But for right now, it's buttons. All right. Now you're going to see that these buttons have an attribute called onClick. All right. And when somebody clicks on this button, we're calling what's called a function. So this is a call to a function called show layer 1. All right, and you may not remember this, but we talked about functions way back when we first started looking at Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. All right, functions were little mini programs that we could use to accomplish a task. So this activate button calls a function called show layer 1. Now, what is show layer 1? All right, if we go up here, inside of these script tags, so there's a starting script tag, there's an ending script tag, we are writing what's called JavaScript. All right, and JavaScript allows us to create functions. So I've gone ahead and created several functions here that make different things happen on the web page. So this first button says call function show layer 1. So if we scroll up here, we can see that I've written a function called show layer 1, and it's right here at the top. Now, what happens inside of this function? It says document.getElementById layer 1 .style .display equals block. And then it says document.getElementById layer 2 .style .display equals none. So what's happening here? All right, the document part is referring to your web page. The getElementById is referring to a specific tag in the web page. Now, what tag? Well, we're going to see that in a second. But if we go down, we can see that some of the tags have IDs in them. All right, and the name assigned to the ID is what I came up with as the programmer. There's nothing magical about these names. It's just what I chose. And if we scroll down, we can see that this div tag has the ID layer 1, and its starting attribute is display none. All right, so when the page first loads, it's set to display none, which basically means that anything inside of this tag is invisible because we set the display property to none. It's not displaying. So that includes all of this code right here until the end of the div tag, which is right here. Here's my second div tag, which has the ID layer 2. Notice that it is also set to display none. And then inside of it is only the word boom, and then it ends the div tag. So those are the two tags that they're referring to. They're referring to this div tag, which has the word boom inside of it. And they're referring to this div tag, which has pretty much everything else inside of it. So what this code is doing is it's saying, hey, go get that div tag that has the name layer 1, change the style of that tag, specifically change the display style attribute, and set it to block. All right, which is why when I click on this button, suddenly I can see the whole page. The style attribute has been changed from none to block, which makes the whole page visible. Now, this one right here makes layer 2, which is the word boom, invisible. So if the word boom was on the screen, this would make it invisible so that I would no longer see it. All right. It's just saying display none. All right. Which is why if I go here and I click detonate, boom. When I click activate, the page shows up and the word boom is no longer there because it made it invisible. All right, so I can now go in and change attributes of my website using JavaScript and going in and changing some of these properties. Now, if I look at the second button, which is the deactivate button, that calls a different function. All right, it calls the function show layer 2. Show layer 2 is very similar to what we just saw, only it's making them both get set to none. So layer 1, which again was the whole page mostly, the display property is set back to none, and layer 2 is also set to none. So it's making them both invisible. That way it doesn't matter which one's showing, if I hit deactivate, boom, it'll make either one go away. So if I hit this, it makes them both go away because they're both being set to 0 there. Or it's not set to 0, they're being set to display property of none. All right, so that's kind of how that's all fitting together. All right, so this is sort of the first wave of what we're doing. Now, before we go any further, I want to talk about a few of the details. All right, so first of all, JavaScript is case sensitive. So what that means is your uppercase, lowercase matters. Most of the languages we've been using thus far have been case insensitive, so it didn't matter whether you had things in uppercase or lowercase, they worked regardless. All right, that is no longer the case. If you do not have the correct capitalization, your code will not work. So when you're creating a function, the word function has to be in all lowercase. All right, the name of your function is up to you. All right, that can have upper or lowercase, but whatever you decide, you have to consistently do it the same way. It can start with letters. It cannot start with a number. So you can have numbers in it, but they can't be at the start of it. All right. Functions always have these parentheses at the end. All right, that's how we know that it's a function. You can put things inside of these parentheses, but that's a little advanced for where we're dealing with right now. But this is basically where you can put parameters or pass things into a function. Again, nothing we have to worry about right now, but these are required. All right, just in case you can't tell on the video, these are curly braces, and you have a left curly brace for the start of your function. You have a right curly brace for the end of your function. Now again, this whole document.getElementById, all of that capitalization matters. So document is all lowercase. GetElementById uses something called Camel Case, and this is the way programmers usually do it when they're squishing words together. The first word will be in lowercase, and then after that, each extra word, the first letter is capitalized. So get is all lowercase, element gets a capital E, by gets a capital B, ID gets a capital I. All right, this is called Camel Case, and this is, again, when you're writing this code, you have to match the upper and the lowercase, otherwise it won't work. Then we've got .style, .display, equals, and then we're just setting it to different properties. All right, so word of warning, JavaScript is much more demanding of you as a programmer. All right, it's not going to be as flexible as SQL or HTML or CSS or some of those other things. Okay, so let's go down to our next button, which is the Detonate button. All right, this calls the function showLayer3. All right, so this is the one that had the little pop-up window show up, and it uses something called an if statement. All right, now we saw these in Excel or Google Sheets, and it basically allowed us to kind of have a choice or let the program make a decision. So the way this one works is we have an if statement. So it's the word if, all lowercase, and again, that matters. There's a left parenthesis for the if statement. There's a right parenthesis for the if statement. Whatever we put inside of these parentheses, this is the test. This is what we're checking. All right. And if whatever's inside those parentheses is true, we get to do this code that's inside the braces. Again, this is a left brace, a left curly brace, and a right curly brace. If whatever's inside of these parentheses is not true, we skip this code. So this is saying if, and then this is what makes that little pop-up window show up that says, are you sure? If you click OK, then we execute this code or run this code. If you click cancel, the code is skipped. All right, so I click on the button. It says, are you sure you want to do this? If I click cancel, nothing happens because this code gets skipped, and then there's no other code inside of the function, so nothing happens. If I click OK, it goes in here and runs this code, which makes layer 1 disappear and makes layer 2 appear. And again, it's basically the reverse of show layer 1. So all of the main text disappears, and then the only thing that shows up is the word boom. This one, it was kind of the reverse. Boom disappeared, and all of the main text showed up. All right, so these first three functions are all just playing with that same display property and setting them to either block or none to make them appear or disappear. All right, so let's go down to our next button, which was the opposite day and the regular day button. All right, so these are pretty similar, so we'll kind of look at these together. They both still have this on click event. So opposite day, regular day. All right. Let's go up and look at what they do. So here's the function opposite day. Here's the function regular day. Again, notice function all lowercase. These, again, you as the programmer are choosing these function names, so they can be whatever you want. But notice I do have these parentheses. Those are required. And I do have the left brace and the right brace that mark the start and the end of the function. Now, the first part of this code looks exactly the same. Document dot get element by ID. And then the IDs this time are on B and off B. Again, these are names that I came up with. They're not part of JavaScript. They're names that I came up with, and I put them in my web page. So what are these actually referring to? Well, if I scroll down and I look through my IDs, I can see that this first button that says activate was given the ID on B. This second button that says deactivate was given the ID off B. And again, these are IDs that I came up with. I gave them those names. They didn't have to be those names. Those are the names that I selected for them. All right. But what we're seeing here is instead of changing the style, like we did for the ones up above, we're changing a property called inner HTML. All right. Now notice, inner is in all lowercase, HTML is in all uppercase. Now, inner HTML is referring to the text that is between the start and the end tag. So here's my starting button tag. Here's my ending button tag. The word activate is the inner HTML. All right, here's my starting button tag. Here's my ending button tag. The inner HTML is the word deactivate. So if I was down here looking at this heading 1 tag, the inner HTML would be welcome to the Intro to Computers demo page. All right, so if I looked at this H2 tag, the inner HTML would be this is a fairly simple document, but it can look fancy-dancy when you use some style. All right, so again, inner HTML is referring to the text in between the tags. So what is opposite day doing? All right, it's changing that text in between the tags. Opposite day changes the on button so that it says deactivate. It changes the off button so that it says activate. All right, regular day just does the reverse. It changes the on button so that it says activate. It changes the off button so that it says deactivate, which is why when I do it, all right, the button that now says deactivate still activates the page because the only thing I changed was the text. The button is still the same button it always was. I just changed the text that shows up on top of it. All right, so that's why activate right now. This is still the deactivate button. I didn't change the code underneath. I just changed the text that shows up on the button, which is why it's still going to deactivate the page. All right, and again, regular day just changes the text back. So we're not changing the buttons. We're not changing the function of the buttons. By changing the inner HTML, we're only changing the text that shows up on the button. All right, so next we have the end button, and that was the one that just kind of made the page disappear. Now you'll notice this one, instead of using on click, uses what's called on double click. So this function right here is only going to run when someone double clicks on the button. All right, these all ran when somebody clicked on the button, on click, on click, on click. This function is only going to run if someone double clicks on the button. Now, what does endIt do? Well, if I scroll up, here's the function endIt, and it uses a command called document.write. All right. Now, if you use document.write inside of a function, it basically overwrites the entire page. All right. So it's not something we actually use very often. It's used more for like debugging purposes when we're writing code. It's going to help us kind of figure out what's happening. But if you use it inside of a function, it basically overwrites your entire page. And basically, I just used it to create a new page. So my new page is just an HTML tag, a body tag, a heading tag, and that's it. So you want to be careful about using document.write inside of a function, because if you call a function, it's going to pretty much erase the whole page, which isn't very useful to us. Where it's more useful is if we use it inside of the web page. So here I'm using document.write inside of the web page. All right, I have another script tag. All right, here's my script tag. I have it inside of a paragraph tag. And what this is allowing me to do is it's allowing me to create text on the fly or dynamically. So when the page loads, this creates the words, the date and time is, and then uses a JavaScript function that's built into JavaScript that allows us to find the current date and time. All right, so document.write, not very useful when we're putting it inside of functions because it's going to like erase our whole page. But we're going to see there are times when we can use it inside of our page where it can allow us to create stuff on the fly. And that's why every time I refresh this page, you're going to see that these numbers change because it's dynamically filling this out. So right now it's at 1047. If I refresh it, it's at 1052. If I refresh it again, it's at 1054. So it can allow me to dynamically create stuff on the fly and put it into my web page. But again, it's not something we're usually going to use inside of a function, because when you use it inside of a function, it erases the whole page and it's not very useful. All right, last but not least, we have my eyes hurt. So if we look at my eyes hurt, what's different about this one is there is no on-click event. All right, that's why I didn't have to click on the button at all. Instead, there's an event called on mouse over, which equals color change, and then on mouse leave, which is color change back. All right, so there's two different functions being called, two different little mini programs being called. One is called color change, one is called color change back. And I don't remember if I've said this already, but when you're calling the function, you have to have those parentheses there. And you have to use the exact name that you gave it up above, capitals and all. So this one runs when the mouse moves over it. This one runs when the mouse moves off of it. And if we look at it, it's very similar to what we were doing before. Document.getElementById. The ID here is wallpaper. Again, nothing magical about the name wallpaper. It's just the name that I gave the body tag. I could have given this body tag any name. I could change this to Apple. And then I would just have to change it to Apple here and Apple here. All right, there's no significance to these names. You just want to pick things that generally reflect what they are. So since this was changing the background color, I figured wallpaper was a good name for it. But Apple will work equally as well. And all it's doing is it's going in and changing the style, the background color to white, the background color to yellow. Now, one thing I want to point out here is when you were doing CSS, background color was like this with a hyphen. When you're doing JavaScript, the hyphen disappears and the second word is capitalized. Again, there's that camel case we were talking about. The reason that's the case is JavaScript allows us to subtract things. We can start doing calculations inside of JavaScript. So we can't use hyphens anymore because if it sees a hyphen, it thinks you're trying to subtract two things. So all of those properties that we used in CSS that had hyphens, the hyphens disappear, the words get smushed together, and the second word is always capitalized. So what used to be background color now becomes background color with a capital C. Right? So again, the rest of this here is very similar to the display ones we did earlier. You're either making something appear or you're making something disappear. Now, one thing I want to emphasize really quickly is that you are not required to use buttons to make JavaScript work. Right? These events, I can put them anywhere. So I could go up into this paragraph tag that I've created. I could put an event on click, and I could call my show layer 1 function. Right? And if I save this, I refresh my page. All right, now when I click on this paragraph tag, it has the same functionality as the activate button. All right, so it's not that you have to use buttons when you're doing this. I just made it buttons for the very first one that we were looking at here. You can put these on click, on double click, on mouse over, on mouse leave inside of any tag really on your page, and it'll do the same thing. So what are you doing today? What is your goal today? All right, your goal is to create some of these buttons. All right, so there's a lab document here, and it says open the document java intro.html. You will find the document includes 4 buttons. You need to write JavaScript functions to carry out the actions associated with each button. For the first button, you will change the background color of the document to red. When using getElementById, you will need to change style.background color. So we're actually going to do the first one together, and then you're going to try the next few on your own. So I'm going to go back to my folder. There's the file Java intro. I'm going to edit it with Notepad++. I'm going to view it just so that I know what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to see it has 4 buttons: red background, blue writing, cute background, change text. So we're going to do the red background button together. How are we going to do this? Well, we have to take a look at our document. We can see that there are 4 buttons. All right, here's the first button that says red background. And we can see that it has an event called onClick. All right, when someone clicks on this button, we want to run a function called readBack. Now, the function readBack does not exist yet. All right, we are going to create the function readBack. But this is the process you have to go through. So when you're doing the next one, the function is going to be called blueback. When you're doing the next one, it's going to be called cuteback. When you're doing the next one, it's going to be called change text. But you have to actually create these functions. So we're going to scroll up here. All right. This stuff in green is what's called a comment tag. So these are just little comments. They don't actually run, but they allow us to see what's happening. And we're going to create our first function. So we start by typing function in all lowercase. All right, and you'll notice that it turns blue and gets italicized, so it tells you did it right. Then we have to use the name down here. So readBack, all lowercase, left and right parenthesis. Then we're going to hit enter. We're going to put in a left curly brace. We're going to hit enter a couple more times. We're going to put in a right curly brace. Okay. Now we're going to go inside of our function, inside these curly braces, and we're going to write something that's going to change the background color. So you're going to want to use these as your references, but it's going to start so we can use this one right here as our reference because this was changing the background color. So we're going to start with document.getElementById. So document, all lowercase, .get element, capital E, by, capital B, ID, capital I, lowercase d, left parenthesis. Now, if we're trying to change the background color of our page, that's referring to the body tag. So we go down to our body tag, and we see that the ID of our body tag is called wallpaper. So the ID that we want to retrieve, or the tag that we want to retrieve, is the wallpaper tag, right? Because the wallpaper tag is our body tag, right? Then it's going to be .style, .background. Now, if you're somebody that's been using this autocomplete, you've got to get out of the habit of that a little bit because the autocomplete puts in the hyphen, and we have to get rid of the hyphen. So background color equals, and then we're just going to put the word red inside of quotes, and then put a semicolon at the end of our statement there. All right. Once you've got that, you can click Save, refresh your page so that it's got the latest changes, and then click Red Background. All right. And hopefully what you're going to see is that the background turned red. All right. If you click it again, nothing's going to happen because it's already red, but that's what you're aiming for. All right. That when you click this button, your background turns red. Now, once you've got that working, you're going to move on to the second button, which is going to change the writing so that this thing that says magic text, you're going to change that so that it shows up in blue. All right, and you're going to change style.color to do it. For the third button, you're actually going to make the background image change. You're going to be setting a background image. But in addition, you have to set up an if statement. So when you're setting the background image, it has to work like this one, the Detonate one, where it pops up this little message that says, "Are you sure?" And then if they click cancel, nothing happens. And if they click OK, the background image actually changes. So on the third button here, you have to make sure you set up one of those if statements. And again, you have an example of how it needs to be set up. Back on this page, you're going to be doing this similar thing, only the difference is you're going to be changing the background image, not the display property. All right. Then the last one is changing the text, magic text. So when they click on this last button, where are we? Too many tabs open. All right. When they click on this change text button, you're going to have magic text say something different. All right, what you have it say is up to you, but basically once they click on this button, the magic text should say something different. So red background, blue writing, cute background is the picture. Change text is going to make this writing change. And then the last piece is to create your own button that changes the document in some way. All right, it's up to you what you want to change. You could have it do a different color. You could have the font change size. Really anything that we've been changing in the CSS stuff, any of those CSS style properties, you can go in and change those. So for example, if you wanted to do font size, it would be style font size, all one word with the S capitalized. All right. If you wanted to change, I don't know what's something else we've been doing, font weight. Whether you wanted to change whether something was bolded, all right, it would be font weight, all one word, second letter capitalized. If you wanted to change the type of font, it would be font family, again, all one word, second letter capitalized. So you can change anything you want with that last button, but it's up to you. You just have to add an extra button and then create a function for it. So you'll go down into the HTML, you'll make a new button. You'll have to give it an on click. You'll have to give it a function name. And again, you come up with the name, and then you'll be creating that function up inside of the script tags, just like we just did here. All right, so that's the activity for the day. Obviously, if you run into any problems or have any questions, let me know, and we can go from there. All right, I hope this was helpful, and have a great day. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to add is you are probably going to make mistakes when you're working on this. So my advice is as follows. Always do one button at a time. Make sure the button works, then move on to the next button. If you make a mistake in your next button, it might cause the other buttons to stop working. That's fine. Once you get the next button working and fix your mistakes, the other ones will start working again. All right, but one mistake can break everything. So that's why it's important to do it one button at a time, make sure that it's working, and then move on to the next one. What also can sometimes be useful is if you hit F12 on your keyboard when you have the page open in Google Chrome, it'll bring up this little side menu here. All right. If you click over to console, all right, it will sometimes show you where the mistake is. So right now I have all of these errors showing up on my page, and it's saying, oh, on line 45, on line 46, on line 47. All right. If I go back to my code, I can see where those errors are happening. So the errors that are showing up on my screen are, hey, they're saying you're trying to call cute back, but cute back doesn't exist yet. Or you're trying to call blue back, but blue back doesn't exist yet. Watch what happens here. Like, so if I change this to get element by ID with a lowercase e, all right, so that's not going to work because the capitalization isn't correct. All right, when I click on this now, it's going to give me an error and tell me that my error is on line 12. And it's going to say uncaught type error document.getElementById is not a function. And the reason they're saying that's not a function is because I accidentally used the lowercase e instead of the uppercase e. So this can sometimes help you find your mistakes. And again, you get to it by hitting F12 on the keyboard. And then in this little menu up here, you want to be on the console one, not elements, not sources, not network, but console. And that will show you where the error is or where it thinks the error is. You know, sometimes it's not actually where it tells you. Sometimes it's above where it tells you, but it can give you a starting point to look for any mistakes. All right. So again, reach out if you have any questions, and best of luck. All right. Bye.